Hello, folks, and welcome to the first episode of the Horror Countdown podcast. I'm your host, Don Anelli, and today on the show, I'm pleased to welcome one of my dearest friends in podcasting, Big Bill Van Veghel.
Well, welcome and thank you for letting me be on. Being the first, I guess I'm either stumbling for everyone else to get better than or setting the mark. I don't know. I'm somewhere in between there. But Don, thank you very much. And just why don't you tell the audience a little bit about what type of things they can expect with this podcast?
So, exactly. If you haven't heard episode 0, which you definitely should because it's an intro to the show and all of that, but just as a little refresher, this is going to be a top 10 countdown show. We're going to take a topic and have a guest on every week, and we're going to count down our top 10 choices of that topic. And seeing as how this was kind of serendipity, I figured let's have Bill on to discuss our top 10 Canadian horror films.
Yes, and it was funny, ladies and gentlemen, just to pull it back. Don had initially said top 10 snow films. And I was like, okay, but let's pull back a little further. How about Canadian ones? And he goes, I wanted to ask that to start off, but I didn't want to be too prototypical. And I was like, go for it. Absolutely. It's in my wheelhouse. I'm very patriotic. I love talking about Canadian films as any other country is out there with their own films. So, yeah, Don. So, why don't you lay out what kind of rules, if there's any kind of structure, or are we
Yeah.
just going to go for it?
Okay, so basically, what we're going to do is we're just going to go 10 to 1, like most episodes do. My general rule was I expected solely Canadian horror, Canadian produced. So I didn't really count co-productions, either U.S. or with foreign countries. Basically, I just took solely Canadian for the purposes of this. Now, I do have a question to ask. Did you end up with co-productions like I did, figuring out where to sort out strictly Canadian and co-productions?
Well, I like you chose ones that I felt were had a Canadian feel to them and were
Yeah.
Canadian through and through. So I think at the end, after we go through maybe some of our honorable mentions and things, I have five alsos that have a
Mm.
Canadian connection, but that weren't necessarily pure Canadian. That, to be honest, one or two of them I was like, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because it didn't jump out at me, or it's not, unless you kind of want to follow the money trail, you're not going to
Right. Yeah.
realize it's Canadian.
Yeah. That's a great minds. I mean, I guess that's another serendipitous reason why you're the first guest on the show because that was exactly my line of thinking. So.
It,
Uh,
it it might actually line up with a film potentially of mind of thinking of each other's minds that might even play into the list.
Exactly. So you mentioned earlier about the money trail. What exactly was that for those that are not in the loop?
Well, for those of you not in the loop with Canadian horror, my name is Bill Van Veghel. I'm on Land of the Creeps podcast. I'm on Phantom Galaxy podcast with some amazing podcasters. But I am one of the few big podcasters that I know of that are Canadian. Now there are lots out there. Don't get me wrong, but I'm the one that Don knows. So Uh, for the history of Canadian horror, we didn't really get a lot until the early 60s, where there was one called The Mask that came out. And it was a legit horror, but I think it was 1961, 62, somewhere in that range. And then, we kind of had a few here and there. But the money really didn't start flowing in Canada until the Canadian government kind of realized that if we want a little bit of economy to our entertainment industry, let's make tax breaks for those that want to produce and shoot films in Canada. So we had a whole range from the mid 70s under Pierre Trudeau as our prime minister, had tax breaks for people to shoot films of all kinds, but especially horror seemed to gravitate towards it. So at a certain point, 50% of the money you spent was matched. Then I think it went up to 70. And I think by the end of the early 80s, it was almost a 1-to-1 matchup. So it was well worth coming up to Canada to shoot a horror film. So there were a lot of horror films under what they called the tax shelter that came in and were shot. And some of them we will be talking about on the top 10, I'm pretty sure. and some of the others weren't exactly top notch quality. Because basically, what I watched a documentary that I'll mention in a minute, and they said anybody in Hollywood with an old script that they needed dusted off and they wanted ever made, come up to Canada. If you can prove that it was a legitimate film, the Canadian government would subsidize it. So there were a lot of bad ones, but a few of the good ones came through. And everything from bad sci-fi to good slashers to thrillers to movies in between, and some notable names that you will know as we go through the countdown kind of got their start in this mid 70s to early 80s time frame. And since then, they've changed the setup where they now get tax credits, but places like Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver continue to have films shot in there on a yearly basis from people that can't, that it's more to their desire and for them to want to come up to Canada because of the tax breaks.
Yeah, I came across some of that when I was doing some research. So perfectly said, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, how do you want this to start up, buddy?
I feel like this is a case where the guests go first. So if you don't
Abs-
mind, let's hear your number 10.
Absolutely. Number 10. Now, just for anybody listening that wants to know, initially I had a list off the top of my head of about 20. And that was without any research. That was just what do I think, initial thoughts. And I pared it down to 15, and then getting from 15 to 10 was tough. So some of these, hopefully, you've seen and known, but I'm also equally as happy if you haven't seen them because then I'm shedding light on ones that I think are criminally underseen. So for my number 10 is one from 1997 that is a bent on horror sci fi that was before Saw and all of its copycats, and that's Cube.
Mm.
Cube drama slash horror slash mystery, according to IMDb. The synopsis is six complete strangers with widely varying personalities are involuntarily placed in an endless maze containing deadly traps. If that sounds familiar to Saw, I'm pretty sure that Lee Winnell has seen Cube before he ever got involved
Yeah.
in Saw. Now, it doesn't have any big names that you probably will know. It is a lower budgeted sci fi film where six people are literally dropped into this cube that is a set of adjoining rooms where they have to go through different scenarios and traps to get to the next one. And we don't know anything about the people until we meet them. We don't know anything of their backgrounds until certain things are revealed as they go through. There's a little bit of harrowing events that happen as you go from room to room. There is some body slicing. There's some good body horror. There's some sci-fi elements. There's a mathematical element to it for those of you that are good in math. It's a logic puzzle, but it's also a fight for survival. And it's what I love about horror. One thing Don knows, and a lot of my listeners have heard me before know, is I love single space, small space, character driven horror. And this is kind of it at its lower budgeted, but it was the framework for a lot of other copycats to come. I really like Cube. I hope I didn't burst your bubble, but you know what, Don? If I did,
No.
there's going to be a lot of bubble bursting in this episode.
No,
So,
it's on my honorable mentions list. I
okay.
it was one I was struggling with. It just ultimately missed out, but I'm a fan of it as well for exactly most of those reasons. The fact that it pulls off what it does on the budget it has is really remarkable when you because it's not even half a million. I read, which was back then. So even for inflation, it's still pretty impressive what they pulled off. Yeah, the logic equations throughout here are really fun. They do make a sense in the end, which is something that I'm a big fan of. I don't mind following a twisty trail as long as I get somewhere logical in the end, and this is what it does. But yeah, I'm not a huge torture person. That's one of the few subgenres I'm not really wild about. So that was kind of like another real thing where it's kind of like lower on my list, but I really recommend it. It's on my honorable mentions. So yeah, great pick. I'm a
And I was going to say the other thing about it is if you're not big into horror per se, but you more like the sci-fi angle of things,
right.
this
Yeah.
is a this is a nice entry point for you.
Right. Like the mystery involving who gathered them together, particularly falls under that. So
Yeah, and the one actor in here that I don't know on American cable if you've ever come across the show, the Red Green Show, about this character that is kind of a guy that lives up in his cabin and he's always trying to fix things. His sidekick, Wayne Robson, is in this. So if anybody's Canadian or anybody who has it on American cable, there's probably one name you might
all right. For my number 10, I'm gonna go a little off the beaten track. This is gonna be one that I don't know if a lot of people have seen. I'm gonna go with the zombie movie Fido.
know. Ooh, Fido! I didn't even realize that was pure and pure Canadian.
I was, yeah. I That was one of the reasons why I checked it. Because that was one that I wanted on the list. Um, so for me, but yeah, I found it out. It's a Canadian film.
Alrighty.
So Fido is the story. It's an alternate universe after World War II. I think it's set either in the late 50s or early 60s. I'm not particularly. I don't remember for sure, but it's right around there. And zombies have become domesticated to the point that they are similar to pets. Affluent families own them as a sign of privilege. There's all sorts of different devices that are used to keep them in line, training, electroshock, what have you. But the main gist of the story is the family who brings home a new zombie called Fido, and he bonds with the young boy and the mother of the family. The father is out at work, and things start off fine, but they go south towards the end. Not really one that I really want to spoil for those that haven't seen it, but it's kind of an unconventional one if you're just looking for, the Romero Fulci, just, gut munching, just pulled you apart, undead kind of a zombie film. It's a little bit more of it's a different kind of a take. It's a lot more of a political angle involving, the class warfare and, greed and, jealousy and all kinds of, those sorts of elements. But it does come around to horror in the end. It's a lot, a pretty interesting story, and it's one that I'm kind of surprised hasn't been adapted into a cinematic universe, because I would love to see where this story goes, 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, see where this sort of codependency between human and zombies emerges, or even doing something similar where, you take this concept into different towns in the same world. I think this is a great one to sort of expand out further from what it is. But yeah, this is a great one. Like I said, not it's an unconventional one, especially for those that want the more straightforward shuffling undead films. But definitely a solid choice.
Yeah, this is one I haven't seen for a while. This is another film that if you're not a hardcore horror fan, this is a nice entry level film for you.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's black and white, so there's not a lot of or if it's not black and white, I think it's like tinted gray. So it kind of
yeah,
has like more of like a 50s sitcom kind of a feel to it, even though it's
yeah,
not like a laugh track or anything like that. But it evokes like those late 50s, early 60s sitcoms. But
yeah.
yeah, s-
It's got that Leave It to Beaver vibe ish to
right,
it.
yeah. I think the most common name, especially now with the upcoming release, will be Carrie Ann Moss as the wife. She's the one that develops the effects, develops the relationship with the zombie. So there's an entry point for people that are interested in the Matrix and want to see her other work. So yeah, definitely a one to check out if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it's got the actor Billy Connolly. And if anybody who knows Billy Connolly, if there's anybody listening in the UK, they're going, of course we know who Billy Connolly is. And he actually just announced that he isn't touring anymore because of medical complications. But he is adds quite a twist to that. Billy Connolly's got quite the personality. It's almost got a feel of it's not a comedy, but it's got the dark comedy there. It's got the feel kind of like that film Parents,
Mm, yeah,
kind of that. There's a
yeah,
slice of the '50s. It's dark, and when it comes out, it comes out.
yeah,
But then 10 minutes later, things look like they're all hunky dory.
yeah.
So yeah, Fido is it's a good one to watch at night.
Hmm.
If you're just you've come home from work, it's about 9 o'clock, 9:30, you just want to have a beer or a cup of tea or whatever you want, throw on Fido. It's a really good, well made film.
Yeah. So, with that out of the way, Bill, let's go with your number nine.
My number nine, I went into a completely different universe from my number 10. One from a company that I love, Vestron 6. And this is one of the first ones in their catalog, directed by Jeremy Gillespie and Stephen Kostansky. This is The Void from 2016. A very H.P. Lovecraftian story, if not directly, it's not directly taken from it, but it is definitely borrowed from it. The IMDb synopsis is: shortly after delivering a patient to an understaffed hospital, a police officer experiences strange and violent occurrences, seemingly linked to a group of mysterious hooded figures. Okay, so you take a deep breath and you're like, what am I getting myself into? The Void is arguably, with perhaps The Thing, the best non Cronenberg body horror films out there. It starts out kind of conventional. Police officer finds a body on the side of the road of somebody who's badly injured. The police officer goes to the local hospital. The local hospital has dealt with water damage and it's got a skeleton crew, while most other of the major medical maladies of the area are sent to another one. But it's an emergency. They take in this person and stuff kind of hits the fan. I also like, again, this is that single location. It's dark, it's at night. This one has Nicholas Campbell in it as the police officer. Anybody that knows Canadian acting knows Nicholas Campbell. He's really good in this film. This gets into dark territory. There's lots of blood. There's a lot of mayhem. There is an alien element. Anybody that likes cults will get into this. Kenneth Walsh has a great voice to this film. It's got that Lovecraftian. It purposely keeps itself vague in a lot of areas, so that's why you might scratch your head a little bit, because they don't spoon feed you. You got to try to figure out, connect the dots yourself. But there's some good human drama, and there's some great otherworldly drama. I love this. Again, this is another good late at night dark film. Or this is actually one that somebody who's watched a little bit of horror but isn't quite ready to step into the hardcore stuff. This is I really like this film. I don't know about you, Don, but
So I knew I invited you on for a reason because that's my number nine.
oh, there you
We
go,
tied, yeah,
right on the head.
yeah, we tied for this
So
one.
so so, what's your take on it, Don?
I'm a huge Lovecraft fan. I mean, I would say good Lovecraft. And
Yeah, there's lots of crap out there.
exactly, that's kind of why I retracted that and put good Lovecraft. Yeah, I can't disagree. I love the setup to this. It's just so chilling and mysterious the way you start off initially with just these mysterious these robed cultists that just come out of nowhere, and the ferocity and the vengeance that they keep use to keep everybody contained inside, and just these sheer bizarre antics that just follow. Like you said, there's possession, there's body horror, there's interdimensional horror. All of this is done on a pretty small budget, so they pull off what they do is, like what we said earlier with Cube, incredibly impressive. And it runs maybe 5 to 10 minutes too long, but that's my only real issue with it. I have a lot of fun with it. Like you said, the whole thing is just so mysterious and so atmospheric. The way that everything is just contained inside the hospital, all of the strange creatures and sounds that you hear lurking off in the distance. I'm a huge fan of it, so I don't have much else to add. It's my number 9 as well. So
Yeah, I said Nicholas Campbell, who I meant to say was another Canadian actor, Art Hindle. And Art Hindle, if you've ever seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers or you've ever seen The Brood, you'll know Art Hindle. He's in that. And the director, Stephen Kostansky, who I had the chance to see a few weeks ago at the horror convention, Fright in the Falls in Niagara Falls, he also did the 2021 film Psycho Gorman.
mm,
So if you're a fan of that kind of horror, you'll really like this one.
uh,
So what's your number 9, Don?
my number 9 is a Lovecraftian film called The Void.
The Void, yes. And how many times have you seen The Void?
I saw it twice. Initially, I just watched it just as my year-end catch-up, and then I watched it. I watched it over the summer for a show I was supposed to do that never materialized.
Okay.
Um, so that was the most recent times I watched it. But that was supposed to be for a Lovecraft-ish show I was supposed to do that just never went anywhere. Um,
Well, you know what, Don? We may just have you on Phantom Galaxy podcast, and we can discuss that topic.
that would be cool. I'll bring a couple of the other suggestions we were supposed to do for that. So
All you got to do is open up the Stuart Gordon catalog, and you're there.
that was yeah, we had that, and we also had a Italian director by the name of Ivan Zucon. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
I don't know him. I'm gonna have to look into him.
Yeah, he does a couple of love. Yeah, he does a lot of Lovecraft adaptations as well. So
Perfect.
um,
All right. So my number
yeah,
eight, I guess I'll just jump into
moving to
that,
your number 8.
is my number eight because I took yours, is Prom Night from 1980.
Hmm.
Anybody who likes slashers, anybody who likes those early 80s films, anybody who's into exploitation films, anybody who loves Jamie Lee Curtis is going to know Prom Night. The synopsis is at a high school senior prom, a masked killer stalks four teenagers who were responsible for the accidental death of a classmate 6 years previously. There's a couple things I really like about this film. One, this is pre Friday the 13th. So it was kind of letting the genre kind of create itself. So it wasn't stealing from anything, it was kind of creating it on its own. Jamie Lee Curtis plays, I'm just trying to look up her, Kimberly Hammond. Kimberly Hammond goes to this high school, and I think it's suburban. They don't actually say where. It's shot outside of Toronto. And they're getting ready for the big dance. The big dance is coming up at the end of the year. Her dad, Leslie Nielsen, that Leslie Nielsen, is the principal of the school, but it focuses more on the kids in the school. And let's just say, as people go to the dance, there's a backstory involving, I'm not even going to say who, because that will give some things away. There is a backstory involving who's going to go to the dance with who. You know, kids like to fool around, get drunk, get high, fool around, lose their virginity, that kind of stuff. But the big dance happens and the bodies start to mount. It's got a really killer disco beat to it. Whereas Don and I's mutual friend Dave Waugh will tell you there's a story behind where they had to create the music for this, and the musical person involved always was like one or two lines away from what the actual top notch song is, and he knew he would probably get sued for it, but he was hoping the movie made enough money that they could pay them off for the royalty usage, and and that's what ended up happening. So Prom Night, lots of blood, lots of gore, some really cool effects involving, well, one, deaths. There's a cool scene on the dance floor. There's a cool scene involving a really neat shaggin' wagon shot by the Scarborough Bluffs. Yeah, I really like this film. And Leslie Nielsen is one heck of a dancer. Let's just put it that way. What do you think of this one, Don?
Unfortunately, this is one of the only early '80s slashers I'm not a huge fan of. I like the setup. I like the overall revenge motive that's going on here. For some reason, it never really. I think it's just too slow paced for me. Uh,
Yeah, it is a bit of a build.
yeah, I think that's just always been my problem with it. I've never. It's just doesn't have like the same energy as. Well, unfortunately, I can't really mention it because I'm going to end up mentioning a similar film in a few minutes, which I think by your chuckle there, you know where I'm going. But yeah, it doesn't have like the same punch as well, I'm gonna go with the non-Canadian slashers here. It just doesn't
Yeah.
have like a Friday the 13th kind of a punch to it where I look at that as like a much faster paced film, even though it's a little bit longer.
Yeah,
I think Friday the 13th is like a little faster paced for this one, but
I think a couple things go against it because, as I said, it was kind of just at the forefront of it. It was slightly ahead of the game, so it didn't really have that copycat thing to go after. It didn't have the skeleton of the, so it was kind of leading its own way.
yeah,
So they spent the time building it. There was a lot of time built about the backstory and Leslie Nielsen and what was going on in town and that kind of thing. But I,
yeah.
I just love but it still does have that campiness to it,
Yeah,
doesn't
there's
it?
still a lot I like about it. Like I said, it's just for me, I've just never really gotten. It's just never really gotten under my skin like the other ones have. I do like a lot of the school antics. The slashing scenes in the final half are really fun. A couple of nice reveals with the discovery of dead bodies, especially.
Yep.
Those are really fun, and I do like the final unmasking. I think there's a the final unmasking. There's like a tragedy or like like a empathetic kind of a undertone to it.
Yeah, that's why I didn't
Yeah,
go. I kind of left it vague because
yeah,
you'll discover it as you go.
right. Yeah, I do like those aspects of it, but it's just that pacing thing is just that one thing that kind of
Yeah.
holds it back for me. I still like it, but I probably not really put it up there. There's a few others I would go to first before that one, but it's still a solid choice.
So then, what do you have for your number eight, Mr. Anelli?
So my number eight, it's a little bit more of a recent one. This is Pie Wacket.
Oh, Pie Wacket. Oh yeah. Okay.
Pie Wacket. I'm a big fan of this one. So basically, it concerns a mother and her daughter who move out to the countryside to get the daughter away from these bad influences at school. Unfortunately, doing so ends up stressing the mother out to the point where she finally just snaps and goes after the daughter and just tears into her verbally, essentially. But based on based on the other influences that have been in her life, the daughter decides to get back at her mother by casting I'm not entirely sure what the practice was. I think it's a some kind of a I think it's like a Wiccan spell or something like that. But basically, she dabbles in the occult to get back at her mother, and things start to go haywire. This is a really fun film, especially if you're into those kind of more modern, you know, art housey, like high quality kind of films. It's a slow burn, which it sounds a little weird coming after my dislike for Prom Night. But I think the thing is that here I think it's just it's confined to the mother daughter relationship rather than the individuals in town. Whereas you get you feel for who these two are rather than just getting little bits and pieces about all these other people in the community. So it kind of it has like a different tone to it, but once the supernatural starts happening, I love it. The final half of this is fantastic, and it has one of the most brutal, heart wrenching twists I've ever seen in the genre. It pulls it off really well, and I really enjoy it for that reason. So, what do you have to say about it?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen it. It's been a couple years, but I do remember enjoying it. It's one of those in the woods.
Right.
and you have to kind of follow along. Like again, I don't know if it's a Canadian sensibility or if it's just the genre. It's not kind of spoon fed for you. You got to kind of follow it and figure it out and keep going with it. But yeah, it's very atmospheric. If you like your films about cults or the other side of religion that it doesn't get talked about too much, your Wicca and your people that are more in tune with nature and things, you're gonna like this. This is one of those better. When everyone thinks of cult films, they think of Rosemary's Baby, but
Yeah.
this one fits right in there. Shot in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, which is northern Ontario. It's got a great atmosphere.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pyewackets. If anybody hasn't listened to or seen Pyewacket, it's definitely one of the better ones in the last 10 years.
Yeah, just don't do what I do and just get it stuck in your head that you end up inadvertently call it pie whack it.
Yeah, there's no pecan or lemon cream coming with this pie. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. As soon as I heard somebody say it out loud, just my first instinct was to just do it over like the Hot Pocket theme.
Yeah, pie whack it. No, that's not gonna. I
Yeah.
don't think you want it selling any female products or anything.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's move on to your number seven.
My number seven is one that I saw a couple years ago for the first time, and I was like, I can completely relate to this. And then I rewatched it again for an episode on Land of the Creeps, and yeah, this had to get up there. And this is one from the last 10 years, 2014's Backcountry.
Mm.
And Backcountry is a film that I can relate to as a avid camper. I do a lot of camping with my family, and I've dealt with bears specifically in my lifetime. And this is one that just puts chills down your spine. The IMDb synopsis is: an urban couple go camping in the woods and find themselves lost in the territory of a predatory black bear. Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. The actors are Jeff Roop, Missy Peregrine, and now finally we get to Nicholas Campbell as a park ranger. Has anybody here ever been camping in the woods? And especially if you're in your early 20s or late teens and you go up with your favorite gal and a group of friends and you're trying to impress the gal. Well, Jeff Roop goes up with his girlfriend, and let's just say things don't go according to plan. This one, honestly, gets bloody well scary as anything. And what it has, that trope that I really like of it could happen. Real life terror involving a black bear. And all you have between you and the black bear is a millimeter thin nylon from a tent. It becomes a survival film. There is a certain scream that happens at one time that I've only heard in maybe two movies in the thousands that I've seen. You're not going to forget backcountry, especially if you're an outdoorsman, outdoorswoman, you like to take hikes, you like to camp. I have actually had bears attack camps that I've been at in my lifetime, but not to the extent that happens here. I really don't want to say anymore because I want you to check out this film.
Yeah.
All I have to say is just wow.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. I saw it and I really liked it. I've unfortunately only seen it the once, so it's not one that I have as much personal connection to as you obviously do. But yeah, I agree with a lot of the sentiments. It could it could realistically happen is a big selling point to a lot of what goes on here. The final half is really kind of tense. A lot of the chases and encounters are kind of well done, and they're blocked out really well. There's a lot of effective cinematography in here. A lot of the woods, you know, they use the woods to their advantage, which is really fun. Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. Probably I'd put it up higher if I was a little bit more, if I had like a more of a connection to it. But I definitely agree. It's a solid pick. If we did top 30, I would probably see to it on the list. But I'm not, in love with it enough to do a top 10, but it's definitely worth a watch. I recommend it as
Yes.
well.
Shot in North Bay, Ontario, which is again a little further up north. So the woods and the scenario and the animals, it's authentic. It's not one of those ones where they bring a bear into a spot where it normally wouldn't be. No, this could happen
Yeah.
literally. So Yeah, if you are a camper who's always been a little one of those people that camps and is bothered by the hearing a raccoon at night, this is a little bit different.
All right. So moving on with my number seven, I'm gonna go to the '80s for once. I think we've kind of done enough of the modern stuff.
Yep.
I'm gonna head to the '80s. I'm gonna head to the glorious tax break shelters for my next couple of films. Starting with Hello, Mary Lou, Prom Night 2.
Oh, you went with the second one.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan of the second one than the original. Yeah, this is a real it's a real cheese fest. Bill from our Indonesian show, you know my affinity for a finely served cheese platters. So
It's,
yeah, this is actually it has very little to do with the original Prom Night. I've always considered this actually a sequel to Carrie rather than a sequel to Prom Night for some reason, but in this one here, a prank at a school at the prom ends up resulting in the death of Mary Lou, who was I believe she was, yeah, she was the homecoming queen, right?
I believe so. It's been many a year since I've
Yeah.
seen this.
But anyways, a prank ends up resulting in her death in front of the entire student body. And it's finally time to bring the dance back. But unfortunately, Mary's spirit doesn't want the dance to continue. So she ends up possessing this daughter of her boyfriend. Because the boyfriend grows up to be the principal of the school, correct? And that's Michael Ironside?
Michael Ironside, yeah,
Yeah,
and I think maybe his second or third role, like a really good one.
right. Yeah. So yeah, the boyfriend is Michael Ironside. His daughter ends up getting possessed by Mary Lou and goes on a rampage at the prom. Only the rampage is not necessarily the hack and slash kind of a rampage. Like I said, it's more of a, Carrie sequel, so it's a lot more supernatural, a lot more telekinesis, and just supernatural or unrealistic events occur. You know, people are trapped in. There's a one memorable scene where a student in a school is engulfed into the chalkboard. Um, so it's not necessarily a slasher in a sense, but it's a real fun time. I have a lot of fun with it. Um, where are you on this one?
You know what? It's honestly, I don't think I've probably seen it since the late '80s. So it's one that I do have to go back to. I remember Michael Ironside in it, and I remember having a lot of fun with it. I remember it had that, the campiness to it. You can tell it's Canadian, but it's still a lot of fun. I always have certain things that I like, and there's a lot of bad movies that have been out in high schools and things. This is a fun one in a high
Yeah,
school, so this is a good one. And I was just looking it up. This was shot in the West Edmonton Mall, which is the largest mall in Canada. It's bloody well huge. It's got a hockey rink. It's got roller coasters and stuff in it. So I can just imagine them shutting down this huge mall to do this slasher horror film in 1986 or whatever it was.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm. This is one that I'm gonna have to go back to. I'm hoping it's streaming somewhere
Here in the states, I think it's on Tubi. I'm not sure.
between
It,
Tubi
it
Prime
Tubi or Prime. It's got to be one of it's got to be one of their.
or there might even be a version of it on YouTube somewhere. Who
More
knows?
than likely, yeah. You can always probably check there, but yeah, I
Yeah.
think I saw it on Tubi. I'm not 100% sure though.
All
Maybe
right.
the sequels. That's what I'm thinking of. So
Yeah, because what did
yeah,
they go three? They went at least four,
four. Yeah,
right?
there's four. Then the
Yeah,
remake.
yeah. Then the remake. Yeah. All right. So for my number six, I went with a rule that I kind of established with Don when he first approached me, and I said I'm only going to choose one per creator. So like, there's this one, like one Ivan Reitman, Bob Clark, William Fruitt. Like, I'm only going to choose one per. This is my time for my David Cronenberg. Now, when you go through the list of Cronenberg films, the man basically built the Canadian horror industry at a certain point. He started off as kind of an independent director. There's lots of copies of his early films that didn't quite, they were almost student films or his experimental films. Everybody knows The Fly, everybody knows Dead Ringers, everybody knows Scanners, everybody knows The Brood. Rabid has a huge following. My personal fave that I didn't consider horror, other than this one, is Crash. I love Crash. Not everybody else does. But the one I'm going with at number 6 is the one that I felt best embodied Canadiana, Shivers. 1975 Shivers. I love this film. Here is what the synopsis is. The residents of a suburban high rise apartment building are being infected by a strain of parasites that turn them into mindless, sex crazed fiends out to infect others by the slightest sexual contact. It's an absolute ball, this film. It's set on the island, one of Montreal's islands. I think they call it Peacock Island in the film, but it's Paul Hampton, Joe Silver, and a vivacious Barbara Steele are in this apartment complex. And at the beginning, you see a doctor taking something out of a woman. And he's been doing some medical experimentation, and it's a parasite. And this parasite gets out, and this condominium of the future, this is the beauty of what's happening in the future. It's got all the amenities, and it's got all the uh, stores and things surrounding, good schools, parks, beautiful green space. This Everything is encapsulated inside this multi-level apartment complex, and people just lose their mind. They're driven by sex. They're driven by a desire to feed. There's the paranoia of trying to survive. It's got a little bit of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, who's going to be the last to live, and some of the characters that want to live, do they live? I think this is an absolute ball of a film. It's got all kinds of different layers to it. Is it a take on society in the mid 70s? Is it at that point in Quebec history? This is shot in Montreal. Quebec's going through, should it become independent? They're dealing with the Fédération de Liberté de Quebec bombings. They're dealing with the rise and fall of the Catholic Church. There's all kinds of different levels to it, but take it for what it is. This is pure body horror on its budget that sets kind of the standard for what Cronenberg is going to do. What did you think of Dawn? Because I heard you kind of chuckle when, of all the Cronenberg films, this is the one I chose.
because this is the
What
one
did?
I chose. But unfortunate,
Oh wow, that's why.
yeah. Well, unfortunately, the other thing is that this is number 11. It
Oh,
kills.
this was your.
It kills me. This was one I was wavering around. I wanted Cronenberg in there. I wanted him. Unfortunately, I slotted him at number 11, and this was the one I used. Yeah, I can't disagree. I love this movie. It's probably one of the few Cronenberg ones I actually like because I'm actually not a huge fan of him. Um, I mean, this and The Fly are obviously like, The Fly obviously, but I really like this one. I'm kind of ambivalent towards Rabid and Videodrome. I think they're okay, but I don't think they're anything special. But the rest of the stuff, I'm not like a huge fan of. But I really like Shivers. I'm a huge fan of it. I do like the chaos that emerges in the final half. The you know I was aware that there was a lot of social commentary in the beginning, so although obviously the stuff you mentioned I wouldn't have been that aware of, although it does kind of make sense where all of that kind of ties in now. So I would definitely love to revisit it with this knowledge right now. But yeah, I was chuckling when you announced it because it was absolutely killing me that I couldn't maneuver Shivers above either Fido or Pyewacket, but yeah, he ended up at number 11, and I feel so bad that I had to dishonor him at number 11, but that's where he ended up, and this was the one I.
You know what the thing is I'm actually a little happy about that, because then that just shows that the breadth that Canadian horror has.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying
Is
is
that
that I was fighting tooth and nail to put Shivers in, but in the end, I couldn't do it, and it kills me that I couldn't. But yeah, Shivers is
I
number 11.
have to
So
mention industry veteran Lynn Lowry is in this as well, and so check out Lynn Lowry in this. All right, so what's your number six there, Mister Don?
my number 6. Unfortunately, I wanted to mention this for the holidays, but it just passed, which would be Black Christmas.
All right, so what is it you know about it, and what do you love about it?
So for me, Black Christmas, I just absolutely adore the setup. We're talking about the original here, obviously. If, for the few of you that aren't familiar with it, it concerns a sorority about to shut down for the holidays. Their last few members are closing up the house for the holidays when they start to receive strange calls from someone named Billy, who begins tormenting them with various crude, and I do mean crude, series of messages and remarks threatening to kill them, or various other sundry items that would probably get this banned for an explicit podcast. But as soon as they deal with him, they start to notice that they disappear one by one, and it's unknown whether it's this mysterious Billy or one of the other boyfriends lurking around the sorority. So this is a fantastic film. Fantastic film. It's obviously it's one of the more beloved season Christmas slasher films. I'm just past that about a week ago, but this is a definite classic in the rotation. Almost everyone rightfully watches this one just because the holiday season is upon everyone. You've got everyone packing up for the holidays. You've got all the decorations line up everywhere. But not only that, you've got this fantastic mystery, and that to me is the central part of the film: is who exactly is this mysterious figure on the phone? Who is the person that everybody is calling? Trying Everybody's trying to figure out who it is and what he's after, whether he's going to actually follow through on his threats, or if he's just some guy looking to blow off for the holidays but can't get anything, so he's forced to turn to the women. It's not necessarily a full-on slasher. It just falls into that early proto slasher gray area where it's not fully there, but there's a lot of elements that take place with the slasher. The finale is fantastic. There's a brutal black joke that I think works well for the film, and it's just immensely entertaining. I have a lot of fun with it, and it it's definitely, I think, one of the better, not just Canadian films, but it's one of the best Christmas horror films of all time, I would say.
Yeah, this is a film that arguably will make my top 10 horror films, period.
Mm.
And I'm not going to say a whole heck of a lot now, but I do want to bring up the fact that it was directed by Bob Clark. Now, Bob Clark did also in 1974 Death Dream. Bob Clark did a few other horrors, but he also did A Christmas Story 10 years later with Peter Billingsley.
Yeah.
So the guy can do scary Christmas or he can do heartwarming Christmas. He just loves Christmas.
Yeah.
So good on Bob Clark. So that's as far as I'll go with that. Other than what you didn't mention was there's a subplot line about an abortion
Oh, right. Yeah.
and and Olivia Hussey getting an abortion. Like this movie works on many levels, and in the United States and in Canada at that time, a lot of places were struggling whether to allow abortions or women's rights were kind of at their peak going right then and there, and rightfully so. And so the subplot is almost as interesting as the main plot.
Yeah.
So it works on multiple levels.
Not only that, but it's also, I would say, one of the first feminist horror films where not only is the main character a person that actually gets an abortion, she actually fights back, and she snaps at her boyfriend like numerous times about why she did it. Like, I did it for me. I'm not ready. I don't care what you think. It's my choice. I think that's a fantastic statement that would echo well today.
The other thing about this film I really like is in many of the films to follow, and even previous to, the female characters were side characters. They were there because they were busty. They were there because they were there to please their man. They were there. They were eye candy or just extra characters to fill out the cast.
Right.
Here, the female characters play. I mean, other than John Saxon and Billy, the women are first and foremost not just there. They're smart. They're intelligent. They're strong. They fight back. They were almost a prototypical final girl, Olivia Hussey, and the late Margot Kidder. Let's not forget fellow Canadian Margot Kidder as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah. So my number five is one that I didn't know for the longest time was Canadian, and when I did, I was like, okay, I'm jumping on this. This genre is one that a lot of people either love or dislike, and that's horror comedy. And horror comedy, if you don't like comedy in your horror, or if you don't like horror in your comedy, this movie's not for you. If you like homages, if you like a smartly written film, if you want one that's just a heck of a lot of fun, you're going to like 2010's Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Tucker and Dale versus Evil to me is my all-time favorite comedy horror or horror comedy, whichever order you want to get it in, because it's about these two guys that buy this cabin out in the woods. It looks like they're, not the most affluent, but they're good natured fellows. And they bought this cabin, or I will not call it a fashionable high end cottage. This is literally a rural cabin that they're pretty handy, they appear to be, and they're going to fix this up to kind of be their fishing village or their hunting hangout while they go out in the woods. But there's a group of teenagers around the corner that are out there drinking and carousing and camping in the woods. And these two, Tucker and Dale, do some things that people end up dying. But they're done in such a comedic way that there's an homage to prior slashers and teenage horrors. But I mean, other than the killing, you're gonna love the characters, and not just Tucker and Dale, who are Tyler Labine and Alan Tudyk are brilliant, but one of the female characters on the other side, you kind of, there's almost like a romance brewing, and the guy's bringing her food, and there's a scene involving a wood chipper that I don't care how many times you've seen it, you're gonna laugh, and if you haven't seen it, you're gonna pee yourself. I guarantee it is absolutely brilliant. And what he's left holding is he like I'm still laughing thinking of it. Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I think is the gold standard. That and Shaun of the Dead for horror comedies. What do you think of this one, Don?
I had this on my not quite Canadian list. I thought this was a co-production.
I I didn't know,
I
so I
had
went
this on
with it.
my I had this on my this would have been on my list by now. If I would have known, I thought I had this on my not quite Canadian list.
Yeah, I had it on. I saw it was filmed in Alberta, so I
Oh,
went with it.
okay. So yeah, this again, kind of like with Shivers, this kills me because I put this on the list if I would have known. I thought it was
Okay.
a co-production.
Yeah, it might have been. This was one of those ones I didn't research it that well,
Mm,
so
yeah.
it could have been a co-production. Like it had a value, a production value to it that not that many Canadian films do.
Yeah, I can't disagree. It just it cracks me up every single time I think about it. A lot of the memes or a lot of the jokes that pop up about it, I love. Uh, and then you forget about the fact that the two guys are just absolutely endearing, and you want them to survive. And it's a fantastic film. I love it to pieces. I had it as my not quite Canadian list, but it's on mine if I for sure find out it's a 100% Canadian film. So
Yeah, yeah. This was the one I put on. I'm like, I'm just gonna throw it on the wall, see if it sticks.
I'd tack it up there with you if I knew it was Canadian. So I'm not gonna throw it back or anything, but Yeah.
Alrighty. So what do you got for number five there, Don?
My number five, this was the film I mentioned a few minutes ago in regards to the more preferred Jamie Lee Curtis Canadian slasher. This is Terror Train.
See, I had this as a co-production.
Oh, this one was actually I looked up on IMDb and it's just it just says strictly Canada. This one doesn't have any co-production.
Oh, does it not? Oh, okay.
Yeah, this one
All
I
right.
looked up and this one just it solely says Canada on it.
Oh, beauty. Okay.
So,
So why don't you and tell the audience what it's all about?
this concerns a train trek through the country through I think it's the some kind of mountain range. It's a graduation party for a wait, not graduation party. It's a New Year's party. That's my because it's a holiday film as well. It's a it's a New Year's Eve party for a sorority and a fraternity. They're like sister. I think they're sister groups. I'm not entirely sure,
It's
but
been a while since I've seen it, so I
yeah.
don't know.
But anyways, they board this special train, and they go about their merry ways. Only they come to find out that they're being whittled down one by one, and it come to find out it has to deal with a prank that was pulled the year before when Jamie Lee Curtis's character was initiated into the sorority that ended up resulting in the death of the one of the former fresh s- the fraternity brothers. He ended up dying in the prank, and now it turns out that it could be him back to settle the score, or it could be some other character that we've meet along the way that's just out collecting bodies. But this is a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite slasher films. I've always enjoyed the setup on the train. I think it pulls itself out really well. There's a lot of just fantastic stalking in here. It's much more in line with the early 80s slashers that we see emerging from this time period. But um, I really like it just because I think this is a better showcase for Jamie Lee than what she did in Prom Night. Not that her dancing skills wouldn't have been welcome at it at all, but I think in terms of a horror showcase, I think she pulls it off a little bit better here. I think the confrontation with her and the killer is a little bit more engaging. Like I said, the train is put to fantastic use, and to me, I hold Terror Train just a little bit higher in regards as that iconic early '80s slasher film. So
Yeah, I'm not gonna argue on that with you because I mean it's two different tastes of Jamie Lee Curtis. It is a good film, as I said. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I again, it's in one of those contained area horror films with limited characters. You kind of know how it's going to play out, but you kind of want to see how it does, and that's what I like about this film. The one thing I always like about telling anybody that hasn't seen this film is the one and only screen debut of David Copperfield
right, yeah. I never
is in
even
this,
mentioned. Yeah, he's in this. So
and let's just say he meets an interesting demise. Whoops, minor spoiler. He meets a demise. So David Copperfield does, but
yeah,
yeah, this is a fun film. And definitely, again, if you're into this, is pre Friday the 13th. It would have been even pre Prom Night, or maybe about the same time as Prom Night.
yeah.
It, it,
I
it's
think
it,
she
it
said.
didn't have.
I think she said she filmed Prom Night first, but Terror Train got released first. I think that was.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I
This was.
think I'm not entirely sure, but I think she said that was the order. I think she said she filmed Prom Night first, but Terror Train got released first. I'm not
Yeah,
sure, but don't quote me on that. But I believe I heard that story.
yeah. This is another one of those tax shelter films, and of the 500 crap ones, this was almost the creme de la creme of those. So
Hmm.
yeah, Terror Train's a good little flick for you. Anybody who hasn't seen it, please go check it out.
Hmm.
So my number four, I've professed many times that paranormal supernatural films are probably on the bottom of mine, only because there's so many bad ones that you have to fight to get the good one. This film here, for the longest time, was my all-time favorite paranormal supernatural haunted film, and that's 1980's The Changeling. The Changeling is a story involving George C. Scott. Anybody that's seen Patton or many of the other films he's been in knows George C. Scott. Apparently, a real crusty piece of work with, but one heck of an actor. The synopsis is this: after the death of his wife and daughter in a car crash, a music professor staying at a long vacant Seattle mansion is dragged into a decades old mystery by an inexplicable presence in the mansion's attic. I almost stopped it when I said Seattle because I'm just looking up to see where it was shot. And oh, it was actually shot in Seattle. Okay. Um, this is a story that is a slow burn. This is a supernatural story of a professor whose family dies in a car crash, and you see it right off the bat. And it is harrowing when his son gets killed. And he gets on with his life. I think he takes a job at another university and he moves to a large old house that had been vacant for a while. He needed a spot where he could do his studying and his music teaching. And he goes to the house and he starts to hear some things. And he hears some more things. Let's just say it builds lots of spooks, lots of scares, lots a strong musical soundtrack, or I guess it more rather a score. And it's one of the better supernatural films you're going to see. It ends, let's just say, in a Corman-esque fashion. I really like The Changeling. What do you think about this one, Don?
I like it. I'm not in love with it. It's one of those. It's just a little too sedate for me. When it works, it's fantastic. I really enjoy it, but it's one of those. I think it. I would like it a little bit more if it was one. It's. I think it's 10 minutes too long. So either trim a few scenes or not necessarily play it at like I would say I would like this movie a lot better if I played it at 1.5 instead of just regular playthrough. I think that would make me like the film a little bit more. But I do agree on a lot of the aspects. I do think there's a lot to like here. Like you said, the supernatural is really good when it's well done, when it appears in here. But yeah, overall for me, it's just one of those. I would want something just a little bit faster than what happens here. But,
Yeah, it
it's
is.
still it's still a quality film, just, it just misses the mark for me.
Yeah, it is what I like to call purposefully paced.
Yeah, that's a good
And some
yeah.
and sometimes you want to hit that fast forward button a little bit because they do get into some backstory stuff and him fumbling around in the house and such. I just like it for the atmosphere and kind of where it goes. I like the end game in this
Yeah, I agree, like I said, a lot of those areas work for me, I do like a lot of the mystery, I do like the build up. It's just I wish that, I could play this at 1.5 or even 1.25, I'm not picky.
one. Just not at 1.0.
Yeah, 1.0, it doesn't, settle it for me. 1.25 or 1.5, or bearing that, maybe trim 5 minutes here and there, but
Yeah, you could easily all that time of him researching the house and such. You can cut
yeah,
that out.
you can probably do that a little bit faster or not do that at all, but I still definitely agree it's worth a watch. Like I said, if we were doing maybe a top 30, I would probably place it somewhere, but mm, eh,
Yeah.
it,
The one thing that draws me to it, and also I've heard bad, is George C. Scott. He puts everything into his roles, but I hear he's a real piece of work to work with.
mm, yeah.
All right. So what do you got for number 4 there, Don?
So my number four, similar to you, this is a supernatural kind of a film, but I'm going a little bit more recent than you. I'm going with Grave Encounters.
Oh, Grave Encounters. Okay.
I'm not a strong found footage guy. I enjoy it when they pop. I enjoy them when they're good, but it's not like I'm a diehard for or against. So, anyways, to set the stage for this one. So a paranormal research crew, they decide to investigate a local. M- I think it's an insane asylum. I don't really remember what it was used for to begin with. I think it was either like an insane asylum or some kind of like off the beaten path medical hospital of some kind. I don't remember what the original purpose was for. It's been a hot minute since I've revisited this one last, but essentially they managed to work their way into the building and shit goes sideways from there. A lot of you know it starts off kind of quiet at first. They basically do one of my favorite things where they enter corridors or they're into rooms, and suddenly the entrance way is no longer there. It's completely sealed off. Time starts to mess with them. It feels like it's been days or weeks or hours, and it's only been like it feels, they make a comment earlier on where they say, it feels like it's been 5 hours. No, it's only been 10 minutes. Stuff like that. It really starts to get to me. And then the ghosts show up. And I really enjoy this. I think it's atmospheric. I think it's chilling as hell. I love where it goes in the final half because it just gets crazy with all kinds of demonic manifestations and, terrifying ghosts just appearing out of nowhere. Um, I really enjoy it. It's like I said, it's one of my favorite found footage films. I'm not a huge fan, but this is one of the cases where I definitely think it works. So, where do you land on this one?
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this film. It didn't make my top 10 because, to be honest, I didn't think of it. So it might have altered my list. But yeah, I'm like you. It has my two least favorite genres, paranormal and found footage. But this one works. This one's creepy. It's atmospheric. It kind of gets you on that journey. And it also kind of gets you in a more uh, up to date context with kind of like Gen X looking at those ghost story ghost hunter TV series. You kind of got that feel to it,
Hmm.
which I like. But though I also like, again, small space, single location. You don't know what's behind the door. The shadows are used really well in this. Something's lurking down the corridor. You might hear something rumbling. You can't see it. It's ripe for jump scares if you're a little bit nervous or squeamish. It's not necessarily your thing. Yeah, I really like this one. This one almost one I didn't even put in my honorable mentions. My other Canadian found footage one was Afflicted, which I
Oh,
really
yeah,
liked.
I'm a fan of
I
that one too. That one was
Yeah,
on my. That's my not quite Canadian because I think that's a co-production. But yeah, I'm a fan of that one as well. I really like it.
yeah. So again, I didn't research it enough to put it on my list, but again, that's another one of those found footagey ones that works. But yeah, if anybody listening hasn't seen Grave Encounters, it's definitely in my top 5 found footage films of all time. So yeah, absolutely go for that one.
All right,
Now, my number 3, let me just take a drink of water here.
go ahead.
You can edit that out. So, for my number 3 is one I unapologetically love. It's not going to make your top 30, Don. It might not make your top 50. I love it, and it's my prerogative. It's from a director that went on to do a little film called Ghostbusters. Ivan Reitman's 1973's Cannibal Girls.
Hmm.
I love Cannibal Girls. Is it a great film? No. Is it one that, pushes the envelope? Nope. Is it overly gory? Not really. I have what Joel Robertson calls CND, cinematic nostalgic disorder, with this film. I was home one day. I think I was in high school. I was sick. My mom just said, put on the boob tube while you're laying there. And Cannibal Girls came on because it was Canadian. It felt the Canadian quotient. And it's about this young couple, Andrea Martin, who you'll all know from SCTV and My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and Eugene Levy, that's been in 1,000, The American Pies, SCTV, Schitt's Creek. Cannibal Girls is about this young couple that drives up through to northern Ontario, not even that far north, but they're getting together. They're just kind of a recently acquainted couple that's trying to kindle their relationship, and their car breaks down, and they have to go to this town that I forget the name of the town, but it's in real life, it's actually called Beaverton, Ontario. How much more Canadian? It was shot in Beaverton. The synopsis is a young couple spend the night in an old farmhouse owned by a reverend, only to find out that it is also lived in by beautiful women who hunger after human flesh. So they get their car, they drop it off at the garage, they go into this small town in somewhat northern Ontario. They get to this small inn. They talk to the lady behind the counter and they tell this tale of this restaurant down the road and these women that live there and the kind of cultish atmosphere led by this reverend, played by Ronald Ulrich. Beautiful, buxom women wearing slinky lingerie. They come in, they serve them dinner, they do a song and dance, they play parlor games. There's other men at this hotel that the dinner is taking place at, and the men are wayward businessmen, people off the main path, and let's just say they all succumb to their needs of the flesh and they pay for it. Is it is it the best filmed movie? No, but it's oozes Canadiana. It's set in the winter. It's fun. It's playful. It's not an extremely long film. It's an hour 24. You get to see Andrea Martin in thigh high boots. You get to see a killer afro with Eugene Levy. And if anybody here is a fan of Ghostbusters 2, there's the scene where they're leaving the theater. On the marquee is Cannibal Girls. This is a film I can watch any day of the week and enjoy. I don't know if you've seen it, Don, if
Yeah,
you've heard
it's
of it, if you know of it.
I've heard of it, but yeah, it's on my to get to list, unfortunately.
Oh, perfect. Tell me when you do,
No problem.
because it's a lot of fun.
All
It
right.
was one of those ones, it was marketed schlocky, kind of like it
Mm.
had some William Castle.
Oh,
So
okay.
apparently there's a warning bell that used to go off in the theater when blood was going to be happening. So you got that.
That sounds kind of cool.
So yeah, it's anybody I doubt like of the listeners of this only maybe if you've listened to Land of the Creeps where we talked about it a while back have seen it, but if you like Ghostbusters and now with the afterlife out, you kind of want to see where Ivan Reitman began, check out Cannibal Girls.
Uh, I'll definitely do. Definitely let you know when I do. Um,
Alrighty.
so my number three, this one is going to be a little more recent. This is one that just it blew me away when I first saw it. This was an absolute delight because I had no expectations for this. The backstory behind everything involving this one just absolutely blows my mind. This is anything for Jackson.
Oh, anything for Jackson. Okay.
I love this movie. To set the stage, a older couple. This is and I mean older. They're retired or retired age, basically. They wake one morning and they go about their business. Husband's getting ready for his day. His wife is in the kitchen making her meals and all that. And then all of a sudden, just out of the blue, oh wait a second, we got to deal with our guest. He should be here any minute. And lo and behold, who the guest is, it's this figure carrying this kidnapped woman. And he drags her into the house. They shut the door. And come to find out, the woman that was brought into the house is the almost about to give birth patient of the husband, who is a gynecologist and has selected the woman's baby to be the receptacle for the spirit of their deceased grandson to be reborn into the world. And things go crazy from there. Now, I mentioned earlier that the backstory to this one astounds me every time I know about it because the director for this one, nobody would really be familiar with it because Jason Dick, who is the director of this, everything he's done Everything that he has to his name is Hallmark Channel Christmas movies. That is it. Hallmark Channel Christmas movies, feel good family get together, people fall in love in the spirit of the season, insert random location wherever, meetups, what have you. And then there's anything for Jackson just plopped straight down in the middle of that. Like, no warning whatsoever, no build up, no earlier horror film to get his name to get his genre feet wet. It's just Hallmark Channel Christmas movies, anything for Jackson, a slew of Hallmark Channel Christmas movies. So, to make that even more impressive, the scares in this are terrifying. The way that this builds is just fantastic because are these people really in contact with who they say they are? Is what's going on real, or is it just something that they've been told, and there's a far more malevolent presence in this house than what we've been led to believe? It gets wild, it gets bloody. It has one of my favorite death scenes of all time. This poor postal worker who's just happens upon this running snowblower, and things go from there. But I haven't even begun to mention what really sells this film for me is the relationship between the central couple. I absolutely would love these people as my grandparents. They are they are the antithesis of what you would expect in this kind of a film. They are some of the most loving, nurturing, caring. Oh, don't worry about it. We're just here to do what's best for you. The kind of grandparents that would sit you down on the front of the tube and, tell you stories while they baked you cookies off in the distance, or, and, just, like perfect grandparents. And then they're just caught up in this debacle. And I love this movie. I can't say enough about it. It made my top 5 of the year for 2020, and I I love this movie. So, where do you stand on this one?
Yeah, it was a good one. This was it didn't make my top 10 last year. I know that Matt and Jackson Rawlings from Father and Son Watch Horror, that was their number one.
Hmm.
It's an interesting film. It's got Julian Richings,
Yeah.
I think is really really strong. He was also in Cube. A much
Yeah, he
younger
was. Yeah, that's right.
Julian Riching was
Yeah.
in Cube. He yeah, you're right. It's the relationship between the couple that makes it. And a certain the reason it didn't get higher on my list is I found it kind of goes in so many different places. Like it meanders a bit from here and there, and I'm okay. Just get to the okay. I'm stepping around some stuff, but just get to the stuff.
Right, yeah.
Just
I can
get to
see
it.
that. Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, that snowblower scene reminded me of Fargo. It reminded
Mm,
me a little bit of Fargo
yeah.
with stains in the snow. It's a lot of fun. You kind of get like an over the top ghost hunter towards the end. There's the dropping of the salt around the door. It's a lot of fun. It's atmospheric. It says horror, but there is comedy to this.
Yeah.
So it's not a horror comedy, but it's not exactly on the level all the time. So yeah, it's a fun film. I definitely got to check this out. I was trying to look up where it was shot, but it doesn't say. It just
Hmm.
says Canada. So I don't know. Could have been
Well,
in Alberta, could have been in Nova Scotia. Who knows where it was shot? But
yeah. All
a
right.
good one.
Yeah, so that brings us to our final gruesome twosome. So, where do you stand for number 2?
For number two is a film I absolutely love, and it's a film that I go by this town every year going camping. This is a film that is of the zombie genre that I think is perhaps the most smartly written zombie film I have seen in quite a while, and that's Pontypool. Pontypool is about a radio DJ played by Stephen McCaddy, and Stephen McCaddy's obviously come from the big city, probably Toronto, and he's obviously lost his job, and he's in this small town Middle Ontario radio station in the town of Pontypool, which really is a town. The only zombies I've ever seen there were lining up for coffee in the morning. That's about all I've ever seen. But it starts out as, and he's kind of a shock jock. Like he wants to sex up the radio, he wants to be flashy. But this small town of Pontypool just wants to know if the hockey rink is open, just wants to know if the mail service is running, are the buses on time, is traffic doing well. So they bring in a lot of characters to come in for music and for radio plays, and if there's anything going on in the surrounding area, they talk about. And all of a sudden, things start to go haywire. You get these radio reports, a chilling radio report of things going on in people's houses and groups of people attacking each other. And you've got Ken Loney from the Sunshine Chopper, which is really just a van. And we hear a lot about Ken Loney, what he really was about, but kind of reporting what's going on. And it's a movie for the senses. It's not going to be your George Romero chomping zombies. It's not going to be any of the top end Shaun of the Dead. This is one, let's just say it transmits in a way that I haven't seen in any other film. McHattie is so over the top, yet you hate him, yet you like him. And it's his relationship with the radio programmer and how they survive and how this small town gets through it. You might see zombies twice in the film, and that's only from them clamming on the door trying to get into the radio station. It's more about McHattie and how he handles the situation and the certain inevitability that may or may not happen to the town and or him. I can't recommend Pontypool high enough. I don't know what you think, Don.
I think I'm not going to have any surprise honorable mentions left. This is number 12.
Oh, is it? Okay, all
Yeah,
right. What did you like or dislike about the film?
for me, I love the way that there's a. I would probably put it as the most ingenious method of a zombie play outbreak that I've ever seen. I agree with you. I think it's a fantastic build-up. The way that there's a zombie film without an actual zombie in it, as you say, all you get are just these varied shots of the horde swarming around everybody and just trying to break in. The gradual reveal and the manner in which the virus manages to spread itself, I think, is fantastic. It's just one of those. I've only got 10 slots.
Yep, yep, completely get it.
Yeah,
But I think, I,
this is the one that it just fell victim to. There's only 10 slots.
yeah, McHattie is polarizing as the main character, but you can't take your
I
eyes off him.
I think that's kind of one of the reasons why I started shifting it up. I was never a fan of him when I first saw it, but I've seen it a couple of times, and I do warm up to him on repeat viewings. But I think it's always just been that initial thing, like, oh God, shut up, you cranky old coot. I think that was always like my initial thing, and I think that's just always kind of holding me back. But yeah, I'm definitely up there with you. I think it's a vastly under the radar zombie film. I mean, like I said, it's my number 12, so it just fell victim to too many slots.
Yeah, anybody that doesn't know Stephen McHattie, if you're a Seinfeld fan, he was Elaine's therapist
Hmm.
when she's dealing with some issues, and he was also in the recent film Come to Daddy, which I
Yeah.
really like that film as well. So yeah, Stephen McHattie's good in this. So I can't wait to hear, who do you have as number two there, Don?
Well, great minds think alike because I have a zombie film, just not that one.
Okay.
So this one again is another new one. I like Bill. I am a massive zombie fan. It's actually my number one genre of all time. And just like Pontypool, I'm a huge fan of under the radar or unexpected viral outbreak reasonings. My number two is Blood Quantum.
Ooh, that's an interest. I didn't even think of that one. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, a lot of this one, it goes to a special podcast I did on this one. I believe it was it's on fresh. It's an episode of Fresh Cuts that I did, which is a guest spot show that I do. But when we were discussing it, we had a fellow Canadian on board who described a lot of the social social politics that were in play in the film, and a lot of that helped to seal what I had already thought of it because it was my number two of 2020. So I loved it already, and then particular episode, which if I can find it, I don't know where it is. It's been lost to the internet, but if I can find it, I'll definitely link it in the show notes for you guys to find it. Um, but anyways, enough of that to set the stage for this one. So as as said, a zombie outbreak has erupted in this Canadian outburb, but there's a strange group of people that are immune to it. A particular tribe of indigenous people that have proven that they will not turn into zombies. Now they can still die and they can still get ripped to pieces, but they won't turn into zombies. They have a natural immunity. And so that makes them the target for a group of local scavengers running around who are trying to survive. And eventually they take them into the tribe takes these people into them and tries to protect them, but you've got your people that want to be an authority and they want to lead, but they can't because they've got the tribe rules and all of their rituals and rules of conduct and all that, and that just distracts them long enough to get overtaken by zombies. So the first half of the film is a fantastic allegory for as a Canadian take on Night of the Living Dead, essentially, where a group of people are trapped in there and are trapped in the middle of a zombie outbreak, and then all of a sudden they find that their social status has been tilted in a favor that's not to their liking, and they have to deal with that while the zombies are out in the middle of it. And then the final half is just full on zombie mayhem. I love this movie. It's it's a zombie film with brains. It's not just your typical gut muncher. you know I love where it goes with this. I love the fact that it plays with the local tribes, their take on what would be going on. I highly recommend this. It just blew me away when I first saw it, and I love this movie.
Yeah, this is a good one. This is essentially you can watch it at two levels. You can watch it just as a zombie film and how society deals with it, but you can on another level there is subtext to it. It's the Micmac Indians and or Indians is the wrong term. The tribe of the Micmacs, Aboriginals, and how there is a rise of there's a large going on lately, but it's been going on for 100 years of the Aboriginals claiming their land rights, claiming their individual rights that has been stolen to them through treaties over the 200 years. And this can be as the subtext of that. It's the rise of the natives against the man, against the government. Or is it the rise against the medical establishment? Because there's a medical end to this that gets discussed in the film. And the other part of it is there's a bit of a not only a culture element to this, but there's a how well the police are felt in society. Can the police weave themselves within the native culture? Is it the white man that's doing all the investigating and just kind of doing their own sense of justice to it? But there's a lot of fun to this as well. There's a lot of interplay. There's a lot of character analysis. There's quite a scene on a bridge that I'll just kind of leave at that.
Hmm.
um yeah, it's a good solid quality zombie film that if you haven't seen, again, very much like Pontypool, is a unique take on that genre. It's not just your girl gets bit and it's biting everyone else in their way. There is a clever writing to it and a subtext to the film.
Hmm. Yeah. So I think with that, I'm just going to go on a limb because at our number one, I think because neither of us have mentioned it, I think I know what your number one is. You may know what my number one is. I'm just going to take a guess and say My Bloody Valentine.
No, mine is Black Christmas.
Oh, oh, why
Black
didn't I think of
Christmas.
that when you said earlier? But
Yeah, well, Black Christmas, I have never sat and done my top 50, 100 films of all time. Dave Becker has done all of those lists. Myself, I think this might be nipping on my top 10 horror films of all time. I love how it sets itself up. I love films that show female empowerment, and this one is probably top of the charts for that. David John Carpenter has definitely watched this film. You watch the intro to this film, and then you watch the intro to Halloween. Wow,
Hmm.
it's right. It's all right there.
Yeah.
I love how John Saxon is in this, and he adds a comedic yet serious element to it. That scene in the police station, you're gonna bust a gut. I think that this film has the subtext of the abortion issue. There's the social rights issue that we got into before, but it's just a damn good movie. The acting is good. You see a young Andrea Martin, Olivia Hussey, Margot Kidder, Billy upstairs. It's a mystery. You don't know who he is and why he's doing this. You don't know if they're going to survive, who is going to survive, how are they going to get it out. There's a subplot about the boyfriend. Is he the killer? Is he not the killer? It's got that winter atmosphere. It's shot at the residences of the University of Toronto. It's definitely at a real university setting. I think it's the Toronto Police Office that they did the scene in. It's a prototype of a slasher. You could talk about Peeping Tom and Psycho. You could talk about Bay of Blood. This one gets in that conversation. I think it's an absolutely brilliant film, not just for the holidays. A lot of holiday films you have to watch in the holiday to kind of feel it. This one you don't.
Yeah.
You can watch this any time of the year and just enjoy it. So that's why I really, really am
Yeah.
passionate about Black Christmas.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, you heard what I said earlier when I had it on my list. I definitely agree. So, I'm like I said, since I jumped the gun, unfortunately, my number one is My Bloody Valentine. I love this. To me, this is, I would say, one of the, if not, this is definitely in my top five favorite 80s slashers of all time. I love the mine. I love the sense of isolation it has. The small town community that is just centered around that area. Everybody, knows each other. And then you drop this old friend that's been out of town for 10 years. And then all of a sudden, everything starts up again. You've got this fantastic mystery with the miner. You've got the atmosphere of the mine itself. The stalking scenes are fantastic. The gore is great, especially if you have, like I have, if you've seen the restored uncut version or director's cut. I don't remember what title they slapped on it, but I can't speak enough of this. It hits all of the slasher marks. The killer is iconic. The weapon is amazing. To me, everything works about it. So, yeah, my number one, My Bloody Valentine.
I just watched this yesterday. I rewatched it for my own knowledge because I love the film, and secondly, just to see if I ranked it. I would have ranked it probably 11 or 12,
Mm,
just because I thought I'd put a few slashers from that era.
yeah,
But what I love about it is, you'd think it's done on some set. No, that was an abandoned mine in Nova Scotia.
yeah,
And when they shot the film, there were issues about, is it safe to be in there? It could have collapsed. And all those scenes where they're towards the end, where the police are running in and they're chasing things down, I guess it got a bit iffy there for a while there. So there's this sense of reality to it, but it's a lot of fun. And I agree with you. Watch the restored version. They had to cut 3 minutes off for censors. I don't know if it was within the Canadian market or the American market, what have you, but they had to snip off a little bit. There's a scene involving a laundromat that I smile every time I see that
I
scene.
remember. I know exactly where you're going, and I definitely agree.
Yeah, I think that was that one scene that all of about 10 seconds that was probably snipped off the original,
Probably, yeah,
but I love that, and I love seeing like e- even the older women there. They're carrying around a 2-4 of Moosehead beer, which is actual beer. It's good. It's good. It's really good when I used to drink. Uh, it's got that sense of It's got the harbinger of doom of the guy warning, almost Halloween esque, Halloween kills esque at the beginning at the bar, saying, "You don't know what you're up to, and this is the story." And the guy just goes, "Well, let's just say things didn't go according to his plans." There's a nice twist. You're not quite sure who the killer is, and until the final end, unless you've really been paying attention. Yeah, it's a good film, and it's got a cool poster. Like that gas mask is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, the packaging. I don't know if you have the new version. I haven't upgraded to the Scream Factory Steelbook yet. I have the old, their original the original pressing when they released the restored cut. So I have a different cover, but yeah, the I to me everything about this is a fantastic. So like I said, if I was to rank like my top favorite 80 slashers, this is in my top five, if not higher. So
Yeah, anybody listening, I will accept gifts of that poster sent to me. I would love to have it in my basement. But yeah, that was I can't, you know what? It's funny. Out of 20, what did we have? One crossover? Black Christmas, I think, was the only crossover
yeah,
between the
because
two of us.
well, we I had three of yours were my honorable mentions. So
Yeah, and again, as I said to Don beforehand, I don't mind that because it shows the depth of Canadian horror. A lot of people might just think Black Christmas or David Cronenberg, maybe The Changeling, and they're done. But this shows that there's a lot more. And in a couple of minutes, we'll get into our honorable mentions. Ones that everybody has those two or three that could have made it. If you looked at things a different way. I had like 14 of them.
I I came close. Like I said, my initial reaction was around 20, and then I whittled it down from there. I kind of came up. So if we're gonna mention honorable mentions, I kind of had to do 16, but I'm gonna just pretend and say 15 and 16 are a tie.
Sure.
So my honorable mentions were in order: Death Dream,
Death Dream, another Bob Clark.
yeah, Death Dream,
Really good film.
Ginger Snaps,
Yep.
Cube. We mentioned that one. That one was there.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. I don't know if everybody is familiar with this one, but this was one that I saw last year, and it was really shocking. It kind of got to me. The Curse of Audrey Earnshaw.
I have not seen that.
Really good. Folk horror, a little bit more slow burn, but really good. I really recommend it. I think it's on Tubi. I'm not sure, but
Sorry, what was it called?
The Curse of Audrey Earnshaw.
The Curse of Audrey Inshaw. I will definitely look that up.
And then the two that we mentioned throughout the show, Pawnee Pool and Shivers, that was 12 and 13, 11 and 12. So, yeah, where were your choices for honorable mentions?
Okay, well, the first one I had on my list that I scratched off when I realized I didn't have backcountry was one that a lot of people affectionately enjoy, and that's The Gate. The Gate is a great gateway horror if you like, 80s period pieces, but you also like Harryhausen.
Yeah.
I think the Gate would be a good one, and not the most politically correct.
No, it's not aged well, but
No, it's not aged well.
it's a
But if
sign
you
of the
like your
times,
heavy,
yeah. It's a
it's a
sign.
sign of the times. They use some words that I would never ever use, but
Well,
if you
yeah,
like your heavy metal,
that's the part that hasn't aged well, but
yeah. But if you like heavy metal, there's a heavy metal tie into it. It's got a little bit of pre Burbs feel to it, but with a Canadian take on it. Uh, One I also wanted to get on, I just couldn't, was Ilsa, She Wolf of the SS.
I forgot about that one. I forgot that one was Canadian. That would have been on my
Ilsa is
list.
Ilsa was one of the tax shelter beauties with Diane Thorne. What a nice looking woman, but at the same time, it's more grindhouse.
Yeah.
It's not
What a nice looking
horror per
woman,
se.
but God, what a horrible bitch of a character.
Oh yeah, and for anybody listening who is intrigued who hasn't seen Ilsa She Wolf of the SS, it's a Nazi exploitation film. You're gonna get a lot of TNA. You're gonna get some fight scenes. You're gonna get some action scenes. You're gonna get some WTF scenes. But if you're kind of a fan of that genre, this is one of your gold standards. There's a movie out there called Tax Shelter Terrors, and they talked to William Lustig, and William Lustig, the director from Maniac Cop, etc. Maniac, sorry, not Maniac Cop. That's Stuart Gordon. Maniac.
No, he did Maniac
He
Cop
said,
too.
"Oh, he did Maniac Cop 2 as well. Yeah, that's right, he did." He said that this is the gold standard of Grindhouse. So Elsa She-Wolf of the SS, I just love it. If you don't like boobs, you're not going to like the movie at all. Ginger Snaps, My Bloody Valentine, 1961's The Mask, the first Canadian horror that's got some 3D elements. It's a little schlocky. It's about a guy that studies ancient uh, writings and ancient things, and he gets this mask that, when you put it on, takes you back to older times. An interesting film. American Mary, the Saska sisters. That's probably my favorite of theirs, although their retake on Rabbit isn't bad. I don't know if you've ever seen this one. Have you ever seen Pin?
Ah, s-
About a couple kids that start to talking to a medical uh, dummy. It takes a life of its own. Medical doll.
sounds familiar. I probably need to see a cover or something to know for sure. It sounds
Yeah,
familiar.
it's creepy.
Hmm.
Pin is creepy, but it's a well done. It was one of those direct to videos from, like, I think 1986, but a
Hmm.
direct to video that had some production value to it.
Hmm.
The recent film, I think it was from last year, Random Acts of Violence, Jay Baruchel. That's not a bad film. I think it falls off in the second half, but I like the setup to it. The alien kind of wacky film Decoys.
Hmm.
Decoys is a decent one. And now here's one that Nathan Bartlebaugh, my partner on Phantom Galaxy, for everybody who wants to listen, he said, make sure you mention this one, The Pit. Have you seen The Pit?
Mm. Yeah, I've seen it once. I'm not familiar enough with it to put it on my list, but
A
I remember
creepy,
seeing it. Yeah, it's one of
a,
those. It's one of the creepiest kid films I've ever seen.
all creepy, pervy, and there's a few twists along the way. Anybody's never seen The Pit? Look it up. It's a lot of fun. Another film, one of the first ones of the Canadian genre, with director William Fruitt. And William Fruitt did quite a few films. He did another one I didn't include, Spasms, with Peter Fonda in it, Oliver Reed. Death Weekend, also known as The House by the Lake. Kind of a Canadian version of Straw Dogs with a little bit of, um, well, what's the American film?
Oh,
A
Deliverance.
little bit of Deliverance in it. It's a revenge film. People attack a house and the people have to survive. It's worth checking out, but it's not easy to find. One of the other tax shelter films that was a slasher that I like. Not everybody likes it, but Curtains. I really like Curtains with John Vernon, where he plays the
Yeah,
director of a film
yeah, it's another one
that,
like Pit. I've seen it once, but I'm not familiar enough to put it on my list.
and it's another good one because it uses the snow. If you like snow horror,
Hmm.
and John Vernon, if anybody doesn't remember, John Vernon is the head of the school in Animal House.
Hmm.
He comes off as a real piece of work in this film. Let's just put it that way. um, the films from Astron 6, the one I don't know if you've seen, The Editor.
Yeah, I think that's the one of theirs that I haven't seen yet.
That's It's their kind of take on a modern giallo.
Yeah,
It's
that's
a lot.
I think it's they said it's like a comedy of sorts.
Yeah, it's a comedy of sorts. It's if you know giallos, you're gonna love this film.
Yeah, I know.
Adam Brook, was it Adam Brook, who's in almost all their films? He's in this one. And the last one I had on my list, which I just like, oh yeah, 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 American Gothic. American Gothic from the early '80s, mid '80s, about a take of people who are at a cottage who ask for help for people in the cottage, and things are not exactly as they seem. Let's just say that. So
Sounds familiar. It's another one like Pin. I would have to look at it to know for sure. It sounds familiar, unless I'm just going off of what I think of the famous painting.
Rod Steiger is in American Gothic.
Oh, really? Maybe I have seen
Yeah,
it. 'Cause I
Was
remember I remember I saw a couple of his. I know I've seen, Amityville Horror because he's the, priest in that one, and then I saw another one. That may be it. Maybe that's the one I'm
oh, sorry, not sorry. Yeah, Rod Steiger's in it.
yeah.
Terrence Kelly is in it. It's Yvonne DiCarlo, and much older Yvonne DiCarlo is in
Hmm.
this,
I
and Michael J. Pollard, who you would know from
Oh, yeah,
oh
I really like him. He's one of my favorite character
yeah,
actors, yeah. I
yeah.
really
Well,
like him.
what's the one with Warren Beatty that he's in?
Oh,
Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and
Bonnie and
Clyde. He's
Clyde,
in
yeah.
that. Yeah, it's an interesting little film. So yeah, look up that one. And
Mm,
so that was it.
yeah,
I could have probably kept going
yeah.
on, but I do have three or four that were had Canadian connections, but weren't necessarily Canadian. So why don't you let the
Yeah, I
audience know
had a
the ones
couple
that
of
you
those.
thought
I remember one you mentioned earlier called Afflicted.
afflicted? Yep.
I was under the impression that Tucker and Dale was, so, that one was there.
Yeah. It might be.
Yeah,
I
I
might
I
have
don't know.
to go
It
redo my list.
Yeah, I would too, if that's where I had it, so, I would have to alter my list for where that one lands.
Yeah.
But I also had, 3 more. One is one of my favorite retro slasher throwbacks called Lost After Dark.
Oh, I don't know if I've seen that one.
It's amazing. The thing is that I actually know the guy that wrote it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film. A group of students on a field trip a group of students on a field trip end up falling prey to a strange killer out in the countryside.
I might have seen it. I mean, it's quite possible I've seen it. I can't
The
recall.
principal in the film is Robert Patrick.
Oh, okay. Maybe I have seen it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like anything with Robert Patrick. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the principal in the film. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
To be honest, I think I have, but I'd have to watch it to
yeah.
refresh myself.
I also have a under the radar ghost movie that came out in the heyday of the J horror craze called They Wait.
They wait. I might have seen it as well. Let me look it up.
Yeah, it's a fantastic homage to J horror. It feels like a remake to a Japanese ghost movie that doesn't exist. I always use that interpretation for it. I always use that saying for it when I talk about it. A woman reunites with her husband, and I don't think they actually travel to China, but I think
Yes. Yes, I have seen this. This is a very layered film.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite ghost films.
Yeah.
And then the last one for me is Ready or Not, just because I wanted
Oh,
this on the list, but I saw it was a co-production, so it was unfortunately shuttled off. But if it was a full Canadian film, it would have been in my top five. I love this
yeah.
movie.
Ready or Not was shot in Oshawa, Ontario, which is the next major town over to me, at the
Oh,
McLaughlin
nice.
House.
Hmm.
And my uncle was the caretaker there for a few years. So yeah, that's a hell of a film. I had that in my top 10 for the year last year, 2 years ago. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of comedy to your horror, but yeah, it's a cat and mouse hide and seek. Yeah, that's a fun one.
I had a blast with it. I think it was in my top three actually when it came out.
Yeah,
So
I think it honestly. I think it made my top five. I really liked it.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a couple that you didn't mention that have a connection to Canada, but I don't consider them Canadian. The first one was the one last year's Hunter x Hunter.
Hmm.
Has I think I don't know if it's Canadian funding or if it was shot here or what have you, but it does have Canada in the credits, but I think it's at least a co, if not two or three countries. The other one is The Witch.
Hmm.
The Witch was shot in Ontario,
Hmm.
but I don't consider it Canadian. Martyrs, the original Martyrs, is a France production, but somewhere in that Canada is involved. I don't know if it's just financial or investing or maybe some of the crew. I don't know. Has Canada. The other one is Incident in a Ghostland.
Hmm. Yeah.
From a couple of years ago, which is kind of a creepy film about, let's just say there's dolls involved,
Yeah.
about
That one
people who get
was close. That one. That was a good one. I really like that one too.
Yeah, that one got in the conversation of my top 10 that year. So Incident in the Ghostland is good. And I had Terror Train, but it may be full Canadian. I don't know. So
Mm.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that one, and I will fall on the soil on the sword. So I think we've had a pretty good conversation, Don. What
Yeah,
about you?
this was definitely a blast. I couldn't imagine a better introduction for this podcast. Thank thank you so much, man. I knew this was going to be a lot of fun, and it definitely was. Before we head out of here, why don't you tell our listeners all about those fantastic shows you mentioned throughout the night?
Well, I am the co-host on two podcasts. One horror related. It is Land of the Creeps with the awesome Greg Mortis, Greg Morgan, and Dr. Shock Dave Becker, who knows just about more about horror than I've ever forgotten. The guy is phenomenal. Greg has a great spirit. And Pearl Morgan, who sometimes comes on. She does all the editing. We have a great community at Land of the Creeps on Facebook. Join up with the Facebook group. Don's a member. Don's contributions are great, and he calls in. And I always look forward to a Don and Ellie phone call because he comes up with these deep dive sci-fi or European films that I end up going, why don't I know this? And but then either do Dave or Greg. So it's amazing. So Land of the Creeps, check us out, landofthecreeps.blogspot.com. And I'm also with my partner in crime, the guy that I talk to just about on a daily basis, Nathan Bartlebaugh, and we do the Phantom Galaxy podcast. Now, I'm not on every single one of them because, as Nathan explains, we're the Russian nesting doll of podcasts. We do horror, we do sci-fi, we do fantasy, we do anime, we do music, we do uh, the Illustrated Fan, which deals with anime and animation films. Strange Frequencies is an offshoot where I do music and movies. We do comedy, we do documentaries, but mostly with a sci-fi horror fantasy bent to it. We're at phantomgalaxy.podbean.com. We now have a Facebook group. Check us out. We have a lot of fun on that one. Don has been on. He came on and talked Indonesian horror, which Don can probably find and link in the show notes.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
It's a
That'll be in there.
That's a lot of fun, and there's one or two on that one that I re-listened to it recently that I still need to see. So I really want to watch those ones. So Don, it's an absolute pleasure for being on here. Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope I've laid the groundwork for everybody else to go above and beyond what I have done today.
Yeah, this was
So,
a fantastic start. You've definitely started something fantastic with this. So, my eternal thanks to you for being on, man. I really appreciate it.
and nothing but the best, and hopefully I can come on again for some obscure top 10 list, which you make me
Yeah,
dig a little bit more than I wanted to.
yeah, for sure. This is not a one and done show. You're welcome back as often as the topic suits you. So,
Thank you.
yeah. All right. Thank you all again for checking out this first episode. We've got many more choices and selections for you in the future. So, thank you for subscribing. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.